rogue nation of North Korea has been making threats and testing weapons for a decade now. Kim Jong-un has largely been considered to be bluffing when it comes to his military strength, but does he have something up his sleeve? Hello and welcome back to Life's Biggest Questions. I'm Rebecca Felgate, and today I'm continuing our popular war series as I ask, what secret weapon might North Korea have? So before we speculate on what the hermit nation may have, let's discuss what we know they do have. North Korea has a Songun ethos, which means military first. The nation has 1.2 million active soldiers, with a further 7.7 million in reserve. This is close to American military numbers, despite the population being just a fraction of that of the USA. Based on 2015 intelligence, which is already at risk of being outdated, it is thought that North Korea has 3,500 battle tanks, 72 submarines, 302 helicopters, 563 combat aircraft, and 21,100 artillery pieces. We know now that North Korea's furthest reaching interballistic missile is the Hwasong-14. However, we are not yet totally sure whether they're able to launch it properly. Theoretically, if they were able to, it could reach a distance of 10,400 kilometers, meaning it could reach pretty much anywhere in the world except from the east coast of the USA, South America, Antarctica, and Western Africa. However, the furthest a North Korean tested missile seems to have traveled is 2,700 kilometers over Japan. This was the Hwasong-12 missile, launched on August 28, 2017. North Korea's nuclear program seems to have begun in the mid-1960s, and since then it is thought that the country has built between 12 to 21 nuclear warheads. This production is considered to be illegal and in breach of the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons Treaty. Because of this breach, because of North Korea's threats towards their neighbors in South Korea, Australia, and the United States of America, and because North Korea wants to seem a bigger threat than they actually are, the hermit nation has not been forthcoming with information about what weapons they do, or more likely, do not have. Essentially, they're terrorists, with the definition of terrorist described as a person who uses unlawful violence and intimidation, especially against civilians, in the pursuit of political aims. The fact that they have been unable to cause damage thus far should not diminish their credibility as terrorists. The intent is there, even if the ability is not yet. So, we have a rough figure, but what weapons could North Korea actually be hiding? North Korea's Day of the Sun military parade made it appear as if Kim Jong-un had a wealth of weapons in his arsenal, but of course, the parade was mere pageantry. Kim Jong-un hasn't seemed to realize that the world can see through the intent behind his displays. During the parade, we saw submarine-launched ballistic missiles, intercontinental ballistic missiles, but again, these were believed to be duds. North Korea's not-so-secret weapons include one or more 10 to 14 kiloton nuclear warheads, which would be enough to cause some damage, but it is small compared to international standards. On Sunday the 3rd of September, an image was circulated by the North Korean government showing Kim Jong-un inspecting what looks like a hydrogen bomb on a new intercontinental ballistic missile. Again, if this is a secret, then they're really excited about sharing it. They even suggest that this could be a 100 kiloton hydrogen bomb, which actually would be pretty devastating. We will never know what they actually have, unfortunately, until they test it. They have said in the past that they have generated the most powerful atomic device ever, which is hard to take them seriously when they make such statements. However, we can safely assume, based on the past tests, that they do indeed have one or more nuclear weapons, hydrogen or otherwise, and they do want to use them. It is impossible to speculate what secret weapons North Korea have, in that they aren't exactly trying to keep anything secret. If they did actually have something powerful, I'm quite sure that they would blab about it in a heartbeat. The more concerning issue with North Korea is not their haul of secret weapons, but deciphering which of the weapons they are showing are actually real. While North Korea may be more talk than action, we should still remain on guard. Luckily, we have the best trained secret agents and scientists at our disposal to keep track of what they actually have. So, what secret weapons do you guys think that North Korea is hiding? Do they actually have any? Let me know in the comment section down below. Do you, like me, think that there are no secret weapons, or do you think that all of their parading is one huge decoy to keep our eyes off another area of concern. Thank you guys for tuning in to this episode of Life's Biggest Questions. If you like this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up, share this video with a friend, and stay tuned for more big answers. For now, I'm Rebecca Felgate. Stay curious, stay alert, and never ever stop questioning.
Urban legends tend to be fun stories that get told around the fire on a summer night. Sometimes they can get a little scary or creepy, but usually, at least in North America, they're not all that bad. However, on the other side of the world, especially in Asia, it seems urban legends are taken much more seriously. Or at the very least, they're usually much more specific, graphic, and scary. And as we know, countless films have been made based on urban legends, but it seems the ones done in Asia, again, are always the most terrifying. Whether you believe in them or not is entirely up to you, but today on Life's Biggest Questions, we'll be looking at the top 10 scary North Korean urban legends you won't believe exist. How's it going, guys? Welcome back to LBQ. As you can tell, this video is a little different, but we want to know your thoughts on it in the comments down below. I'm your host for this one, Jared Bronstein. Now, I will say with urban legends, there tends to be various versions of the same overall story, meaning I may mention an urban legend you know with a different name. If that's the case, let me know below, because I know for sure there's a few on this list with multiple names. We'll still be replying to some previous comments to wrap this one up, but for now, let's get right into it. Starting us off at number 10, elevator murder. Also known as the stranger in the elevator, this legend claims that when you get into an elevator, another person will follow closely behind. After the two of you get into the elevator, the stranger won't press their floor until you press the floor you're going to. Then the stranger will press the floor below you, and when they reach that floor, will step out of the elevator and proceed to show you a knife while saying, "I'll see you upstairs." Other versions claim the man says, "I'm gonna kill you on the next floor," or "see you soon." The man then races up the stairs, waiting for the elevator doors to open to kill you. Some sources claim this had happened to a young woman going up to the 14th floor of her apartment, and others believe this is the reason a stop button was created for elevators in the first place. At number 9, the toilet ghost. Sometimes referred to as the haunted stall or haunted toilet, it's believed this happens mainly in school bathrooms, but some sources claim it could happen anywhere really. So here's what happens. You gotta go to the bathroom, so you find an empty stall and start putting toilet paper down on the seat. At least, I hope you do. Now things get weird here because apparently while you're squatting doing your thing, a hand comes out of the bowl offering you red or blue toilet paper. If you choose red, the ghost will skin you alive, leaving you in a pool of your own blood. As you can imagine, choosing blue doesn't seem to help your chances of getting out alive either. Quite symbolic, the blue toilet paper will lead to the ghost suffocating or choking you until you're quite literally blue in the face. Some sources claim that if you try to leave, the stall will be locked and there is no way out, while others believe if you ask for white toilet paper, the ghost will let you go unharmed. I just don't know why no one talks about the fact that the toilet paper you're getting is coming out of the toilet, so it's likely already covered in, like feces. Moving on to number 8, taxi drivers. Now it seems this urban legend has been around since the beginning of time, and really the template of it can be used anywhere. However, it seems the legend really took its toll across all of Korea, affecting the taxi industry and their passengers. The story goes that an unsuspecting victim gets into a taxi cab, gets sedated, and wakes up either in a field or a bathtub with an organ or multiple organs missing. There have been countless movies and TV shows where this plot has been used, or at least an aspect of it, but it seems in Korea, the legend really scared the public. It got to the point that police had to do investigations and assure everyone taking taxis wouldn't lead to them losing a kidney. A 45-year-old guy even jumped out of a moving taxi, breaking his arm after his wife warned him about organ harvesting. He was drunk, so that may have also affected his judgment in the moment. At 7, red ink. Now there aren't any crazy stories behind this one, just a simple common understanding that red ink should only be used when writing about the dead. The idea here is that red is symbolic for blood, which can be interpreted as death. Others believe red ink will bring them bad luck, so they forbid any kind of it in their homes. It's quite possible people believe if their name is written in red ink, their days are numbered, or they're bound to have bad luck. While others may believe that using any kind of red ink for any reason other than writing about the dead will ultimately lead to their untimely demise. At number 6, we got virgin ghosts, also known as Cho-nyo-guishin. Apparently you know when they're around because the temperature drops significantly, there is a sudden shift in the wind's direction, and you may even experience chills. Known to haunt abandoned buildings such as hospitals and schools, as well as general locations like cemeteries and wooded areas, these ghosts tend to look identical to that of Samara from The Ring. Now, it's no secret the film was adapted from the Japanese film Ring, which was most likely inspired by this urban legend or a similar story. One story specifically that seems to be often shared is the man who heard a knock on his door in the middle of the night. He asked who was there, and a voice just told him to close his eyes, count to 100, and not make a noise before, or he'll die. Now, being the brave guy that he is, the man opened the door to find nothing. No one there. But he was superstitious, so he closed his eyes and started counting. About halfway through, he opened his eyes and saw a ghost staring right at him. On to number 5, dreaming about a deceased family member. It's never easy losing someone, and there are many different beliefs surrounding dreaming about loved ones that we've lost. A common urban legend in Korea is that dreaming of dead family members means someone is trying to steal your soul, especially if the person you're dreaming about is in or near water. More specifically, a man kept having a dream about his late grandmother, who was standing waist deep in water. The dream kept recurring, with the man getting closer and closer to his deceased grandmother until the man realized he had kept something of hers. After paying respects once more, however he did so, the dreams finally stopped. On to number 4, cockroach face masks. It's just as bad as it sounds, as this urban legend follows a young boy or man who suffered from severe acne. After reading online that a new technique can cleanse your skin, our friend was on board and decided he was going to try it. All you had to do was put a cockroach on your pillow, and the next morning, your skin would be mint. So, that night, the guy went outside of his apartment, caught a cockroach, and put it on his pillow before going to bed. He'd wake up to find his skin had completely cleared up, but after a while, started to itch. After taking a closer look at his face, the man realized the cockroach had laid eggs in his pores and scars, inevitably leading to cockroaches literally growing inside of his face. And I hope you guys enjoyed that one, because we got a very similar legend in at number 3, sesame seed baths. Apparently another cosmetic tip overheard from a friend or maybe found online. A girl was under the impression mixing sesame seeds in her bathwater could prevent wrinkles and lead to flawless skin. That day the girl got home from school and went straight to the bath. After a while, the girl's mother got concerned and knocked on the door. The girl replied, "Just a minute," but after a little while, her mother got fed up and decided to force the door open. Upon her entering, the mother would find her daughter sitting in the bathtub trying to pick out all the sesame seeds that rooted themselves into her skin with a toothpick. Some sources claim the girl appeared to have also lost her mind, while others say she was mentally stable, just trying to remove the seeds. Either way, bad situation. Now on to number 2, the slit mouth or red mask girl. One of the more popular legends on this list. There are, as you can imagine, various different versions, but they all seem to more or less follow the story of a woman who underwent a cosmetic surgery that didn't go as planned. Now because of this, the woman walks around with a surgical mask. Some claim it's red, while others say it's just a regular mask. The woman will then ask people if they think she's pretty. If they say no, she kills them. If they say yes, she removes her mask, revealing a horrible scar or cuts across her face. Some sources claim the scars are similar to that of the Joker, while others say the cut goes from ear to ear across her mouth. At this point, she'll ask again, "Do you think I'm pretty?" To which a no leads to death, and a yes leads to her cutting your face up to match hers. Some claim if you say yes, she calls you a liar and slits your throat. Either way, it seems there's no real winning on that one. And in at number 1, the V picture. This one really is wild because it seems so innocent yet so sinister. The story goes that a man comes across a horrible crash. While on site, he finds a photo of a girl holding up the peace sign, or as some refer to it, making a V. The man feels drawn to the photo due to the beauty of the woman in it, so he decides to hold on to it. A few days later, the same man is involved in a fatal accident, and it just so happens that another man stumbles upon this crash. To no surprise, our new friend here just so happens to stumble upon a photograph of a beautiful woman at the crash site, and feels so drawn to it, he decides to keep it in his car. Now here's the kicker. It is in fact the same photo of the beautiful girl holding up the peace sign that the first man found, but the version this new man found has the girl holding up 3 fingers. And I got a feeling after a few days, the girl lifted a 4th finger. And that's it for the top 10 scary North Korean urban legends you won't believe exist. Let us know which one you guys thought was the scariest and most realistic in the comments down below, and let us know what you thought about this new type of video. For now, let's reply to some comments from the video. What really happened to Kim Jong-un? DGenti Man said, "Why can't Dennis Rodman just tell us what happened?" You know, I think right now Dennis is too busy talking about the Bulls and you know, playing with Jordan and stuff, so he'll probably come out with another documentary, or at least maybe like BBC, or maybe ESPN will even do it on him. I don't know, and he'll just talk about this stuff like 30 years later. You know what I'm saying? Kind of like what he's doing now. Breezy said, "Don't worry, he's just busy clutching the gulag match." Yo, if you guys play Warzone, drop your tags below. I'll add you. Mine's Bronstein7. It's just my last name, the number 7. I play that and undefeated in the gulag. Don't even try me right now. Travis in LA said he's quarantining like most people in the world. Yeah, I'm gonna say that's most likely what's happening. He's just quarantining. With that being said, I mean, apparently North Korea wasn't hit that bad, so why does he have to quarantine? And on top of that, he did miss the most important day, or one of the most important days in the political calendar of North Korea, which was celebrating his grandfather's life, who was one of the founders of North Korea. So, I don't know, something's going on here. Anyways, guys, that's it for this one. I've been your host, Jared Bronstein. You guys have been watching LBQ. We'll see you in the next one.
Hello and welcome back to Life's Biggest Questions, the channel that looks to answer exactly those. I'm Rebecca Felgate, and today we are going into World War III simulation mode and asking ourselves what exactly would happen if North Korea nuked America. Current North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un and his late father, the former supreme leader Kim Jong-il, between them have carried out 5 nuclear tests, with a 6th seeming imminent. The regime has made it pretty clear that the target of these tests is the United States of America. Of course, North Korea has some serious beef with neighbors South Korea and Japan, but true to our question today, at the moment we are just looking at the threat to the states. So North Korea are putting on a bit of a muscle flexing show, but does this mean they could actually deliver a punch? At the moment, perhaps not. Their technology is pretty basic compared to the states, but the scary thing is that they are trying. Remember that old phrase, if at first you don't succeed? Well, that is pretty much Kim Jong-un's life motto right now. We know that North Korea is developing intercontinental ballistic missiles, which could carry nukes to the United States. So say they arrive to the day where they are finally able to successfully launch a missile that could hit America, what then? The closest states to the North Korean peninsula are Hawaii and Alaska, so they would probably be the targets. Some say by the year 2020, North Korea will be able to hit Los Angeles, but of course, America would know about it before the missiles even arrived. The setup itself wouldn't go unnoticed. Even if the missile was launched, Japanese warships may shoot it down. Even if it got past them, the USA has high-budget missile defenses in place. The only problem is, nobody is sure 100% of their reliability. If North Korea was capable of launching multiple warheads, 1 or 2 could theoretically get past the US defense system. Of course, Trump has not ruled out a preemptive strike on North Korea. The best defense is a good offense, so they say. Responding to an impending attack from North Korea could be enough to get past the UN. However, it is politically very tricky and could be enough to anger China and Russia, which the US does not want to do. In order to avoid looking like the bad guys, the US may simply let North Korea launch and hope to strike down the missiles. Whether North Korea managed to hit or not, the response at an attempt would be just as severe. It is unlikely that the US would drop a retaliation nuclear bomb on North Korea due to its geographical size and proximity to South Korea, but a major cruise missile offensive would be coming, also a full air campaign. It is also likely that China would also look to respond to an unprovoked attack by North Korea. Whatever happens, whoever responds, if North Korea hit or attempted to hit America, that would probably be the end of Kim Jong-un's regime. Would it be worth it all for the slim chance of hitting LA, Alaska or Hawaii? You'll have to ask Kim. Although, I have a feeling he doesn't think like most of us. If a bomb did hit the States, the death toll would likely be in the hundreds of thousands, which would be devastating, but nothing compared to the death toll if the USA dropped their more powerful nuclear warheads, which hopefully is a situation we will never come to. Before you worry too much, remember right now America is working with South Korea to build the Terminal High Altitude Air Defense System, which would protect against some missile strikes. They're also working with Japan on missile interception. North Korea may well choose to strike, but if they did, it would probably be the last thing Kim Jong-un ever did. So this was Life's Biggest Questions. What do you guys think would happen if North Korea nuked the United States? Please do leave your comments in the comments section down below. For now, I'm Rebecca Felgate. Remember to stay curious, stay alert, and never ever stop questioning. The Democratic People's Republic of North Korea is a somewhat mysterious country forged against the backdrop of war in 1948. These days, the main messages sent from leader Kim Jong-un to Western media is that the country is building its military, is developing nuclear weapons, and wants to attack America. Welcome back to Life's Biggest Questions. I'm Rebecca Felgate, and today we're asking, why does North Korea hate America? North Koreans' issue with America stems as far back as to the country's conception following the Second World War. Back when the war ended in 1945, Korea as a whole was under Japanese rule, and they weren't too happy about it, I may add. As Japan fought alongside Germany and lost, its land was taken away. Korea was divided into two along the 38th parallel, with the south controlled by America and the north by the Allied Soviet Union. The capital of the country, Seoul, remained in the American-controlled zone. As we know from the days of a divided Germany, splitting a country in two can generate a lot of tension. Hopes for unification evaporated as the Cold War emerged, with each half of Korea run in very different ways in terms of politics, economy, and social mobility. Eventually, both the North and South had set up different states, the North led in part by Kim Il-sung, Kim Jong-un's grandfather. As Soviet forces and American forces began to pull out of the separated regions of Korea, the North invaded the South, sparking the Korean War of 1950. America once again intervened in the South, who were under heavy attack. With the help of the United Nations, South Korea was strengthened and were able to defend themselves, pushing upward into North Korea. As bordering China fell under threat, they entered the war to help North Korea. Eventually, an armistice was declared in 1953, with heavy losses on both sides of the border, but the most destruction taking place in the North. This war and the Americans' involvement with helping the South, despite the North instigating the whole thing, is the crux of why North Korea hates America. The wounds deepened for North Korea as America kept a military presence in South Korea, which the North saw as an unwelcome imperialist occupation. They blamed America for the heavy losses they suffered in the war, even going as far as to set up a museum of American war atrocities. Yes, there were heavy losses, but fundamentally North Korea was embarrassed to say that they lost a war that they had started, and they wanted to paint the United States as an enemy. They even created cartoons for children depicting Americans as cunning wolves that wanted to kill them. North Korea became somewhat of a hermit state following the Korean War, and it became clear during President Bill Clinton's administration that the country was beginning to build up nuclear weapons, something that the president then managed to halt, for the time being. Following the death of Kim Il-sung, his son Kim Jong-il took over. Initially, tensions were at an all-time low with America, with President Clinton offering the country aid and even supporting North Korea and South Korea's attempt at softened relations with one another during the Sunshine Policy. During this time, though, the regime began to lose strength. Sadly, tensions heightened again as George Bush took office in America and Kim Jong-il increased his military to try and regain his strength as leader. President Bush declared North Korea a rogue state, and they responded by working extra hard to build its military strength, announcing in 2006 that it had conducted its first nuclear tests. Things worsened when South Korean warship Cheonan was sunk in 2010 and a North Korean torpedo was blamed, something that they repeatedly refuted, blaming Americans for trying to smear them. Following the shelling of South Korean military ships in 2011, the state has increased its presence in the Korean peninsula, which North Korea does not like. In 2011, Kim Jong-il died, with his young and inexperienced son Kim Jong-un taking charge. Kim Jong-un, grappling to consolidate his position, increased North Korea's stance that the United States are the enemy, and made frequent threats and continued to conduct nuclear tests. The USA and the majority of the rest of the world has since treated the rogue nation as suspicious and untrustworthy. North Korea is unhappy at America's working with South Korea to build the terminal high-altitude air defense systems, and most recently, Kim Jong-un and current US President Donald Trump have come to blows over the North Koreans' missile tests and Trump's response by sending warships to the Korean peninsula. The Democratic Republic of North Korea thinks their missile tests are none of America's business, but of course, with the constant threats and propaganda from the rogue state, the USA disagrees. While war, a bloody history, and a continued support of South Korea is the pinnacle of North Koreans' dislike of America, it is also fair to say that the United States' status as a worldwide superpower with huge economic strength is of envy to North Korea. Their people have long suffered awful living conditions. In short, jealousy bitters an already strained relationship. So basically, that's why North Korea hates America. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Life's Biggest Questions. Of course, this was a simplified answer to a very complex question, and I would always encourage independent research on important topics like this to aid your understanding of what could prove to be a historically very significant situation. Make sure to leave me a comment in the comment section down below, but for now, I'm Rebecca Felgate. Stay curious, stay alert, and never ever stop questioning. In July 2017, the Democratic Republic of North Korea claimed that they had developed long-range missiles able to hit anywhere in the world. While this may be a slight overstatement, a threat previously laughed off as nonsense is slowly, day by day, becoming more real. Hello and welcome back to Life's Biggest Questions, the channel that looks to answer exactly those. I'm Rebecca Felgate, and today we're asking, how big of a threat is North Korea really? And I want to warn you, you may not like the answer. Some say a country is only as good as its leaders, and North Korea is a country essentially led by a dictator. There has been just one family family in charge since its conception. The current leader is 33-year-old Kim Jong-un, who appears to be extremely insecure, volatile, and aggressive. Unelected and afraid of being overthrown, Kim's actions in his 6 years in power have been erratic to say the least. Over the past few years, he has killed his own uncle, his aunt, and his half-brother. A person in power with the mental state of Kim Jong-un should be feared. Kim has threatened to burn Seoul and Manhattan down to ashes. He has also made direct threats to Japan and Australia. While a combination of being somewhat unprepared to launch attacks and a desire to defend his status as the country's leader has so far stopped him making any serious declarations of war, if his power was ever truly in jeopardy and he thought he was going to be overthrown, some behavioral experts believe that he could turn suicidal and start launching very harmful weapons at whatever target he can reach. Of course, while Kim Jong-un has the most power to act for North Korea, he is not the sole representative of the country. There is a good chance that, if he were killed, the North Korean race would still be somewhat of a threat. This is because from a very early age, citizens of the Democratic Republic of North Korea are brainwashed to hate the United States of America. Children's stories frequently depict Americans as nasty, cunning wolves ready to kill them. As they get older, men and women are forced into mandatory military training, with 25% of the entire population actually in the army. At over 5 million people strong, this is the largest paramilitary organization on Earth. And guess what? They're also taught to hate enemies of the state with a murderous venom. At military drills, propaganda videos show intercontinental ballistic missiles destroying American cities such as Washington, D.C. and San Francisco. So, about those weapons. We already know that North Korea have a large army, which could do a lot of damage if fighting ever took place on home soil or in South Korea. But the man mass isn't really too much of a threat to the rest of the world. What are threats, however, are bombs. It's thought that North Korea may have developed up to 20 nuclear weapons. While this pales in comparison to the 7 or so thousand that the United States has, nuclear power in the hands of a megalomaniac should not be ignored. Despite having nuclear power, until recently it was thought that North Korea had absolutely no way of delivering them to their targets any further away than their neighbors in South Korea. With their intercontinental ballistic missile tests of early July 2017, while North Korea may not be able to reach anywhere in the world like they claim, the test did seem to indicate that they could reach a distance of up to 5,000 to 6,000 kilometers away, which means Alaska could be in the firing line. If they keep testing, which they are doing despite heavy sanctions placed on the country by the UN and China, how long before they could reach the 11 or so thousand kilometers to Washington, D.C.? That being said, even if the ballistic missiles are able to reach these ranges, there are still complicated technological hurdles that could get in the way of actually being able to hit their targets. But these are exactly that, hurdles. While North Korea has failed in the testing stage many times, they keep persisting, and persistence is a clear path to success. Of course, the United States, the Japanese, Australians, and South Koreans aren't defenseless and could by all means counter the attacks. Right now, America and South Korea are working together on the Terminal High Altitude Area Defense System. This can block about 90% of attacks. However, that isn't foolproof. If one slipped through the net and hit South Korea, it could kill nearing 500,000 people, which is a pretty huge threat indeed. Similarly, American defense systems aren't perfect. If North Korea launched multiple missiles, there is a very distinct possibility that one could hit, which not only would be devastating, would also spark an even more devastating war in Asia. So, North Korea is flexing their small but growing muscles. Can they pack a punch? The answer is probably someday soon, yes. Just because North Korea wants us to worry about them doesn't mean that we shouldn't. While a threat from North Korea is not in the same league as a threat from China or Russia, it is a threat nonetheless, and from a leader probably crazy enough to act upon it regardless of the consequences. Thank you very much for tuning into this episode of Life's Biggest Questions. Do you think that North Korea should be seen as a threat? Let me know in the comments section down below. For now, I'm Rebecca Felgate. Remember to stay curious, stay alert, and never ever stop questioning.
자립 자력으로 중국 환경에 대응 법을 전면적으로 실현해 나가기 위한
For a second, this was the biggest news of all time. Kim Jong-un was dead from a botched heart surgery, and everyone was wondering what that meant for the rest of the world. Were we going to see a shift in a major superpower during a pandemic while the economy is in the toilet? It was going to be one thing after the other, just stacking up on top of each other. We had no idea what this was going to mean for all of us. It could have been devastating with the new leader being even more ruthless, but then the little round dictator showed his face, and he was grinning ear to ear. Does he really think he's fooling anyone with that smile? Now with this, some tension has returned between North and South Korea. There has been shots fired at the border between the two countries, coming from North Korea and hitting one of the outposts in South Korea. So what could possibly be the outcome of this? Hello and welcome back to Life's Biggest Questions. I'm your host, Che Durena, and on today's LBQ, we're going to be asking the question, what if North and South Korea went to war? As always, guys, I would love it if you could like, comment, subscribe, and hit the little notification bell. Also, stick around for the whole list because I'm going to be giving you the answer to this riddle. I have cities, but no houses. I have mountains, but no trees. I have water, but no fish. What am I? If you guys think you know the answer right now, write it down in the comment section, and at the end of this video, I will let you know if you're right. And without taking any longer, let's dive into this question. Now, before we get into what the war between these two feuding nations might look like, let's take a look back through time to see what their history was like, because it's going to give us a lot of information onto how this might play out. Have you ever thought about that? About why there is a North and South Korea, and how the two countries have such massive differences in their beliefs and leadership? I mean, it isn't just one country's richer while the other one is slightly struggling. This is like an evil twin separated at birth type situation. Well, Korea used to be one big happy family. The whole country was unified, and that is how you have everyone speaking the same language between the two countries. The struggle with Korea and the rest of the world came during the Industrial Revolution. They were very reluctant to let any outside influence into their country. They were worried about taking on the mass-producing styles of other countries and that it would corrupt their people. And I mean, they weren't really wrong. Look how global warming is affecting us all right now. But the resistance to outside influence wasn't enough, and the other countries wanted in, and they got in 1910. There had been a long struggle between China and Japan. The two countries had been feuding for decades. With Japan being very open to the Industrial Revolution, they were able to make themselves a serious contender on the world stage, and they wanted to show it. After they managed to push their way through China, they got to Korea and took the country as part of their own. From the late 18th century, Korea had independent status, but was largely associated with China, and after Japan was able to defeat China, they wanted a prize, and that would be Korea. The time while Japan occupied Korea was horrible for the Koreans. To this day, there's bad blood between the two countries because of what the Japanese did to the Korean people. I won't get into too much detail into the brutality. I don't think it adds too much to the answer of this question, but I will just let you know that the bad blood is justified. So after Japan took control of Korea, it remained there right up until the end of the Second World War. Japan was the loser in the war, and they were about to lose control of Korea. Now it went to the Americans and the Soviets to figure out what to do with the country. They decided to create the 38th parallel, which was basically splitting the country right in half, with the Soviets being in charge of the North and the Americans being in charge of the South. Now you can see at this point, this is where things started to get divided. This obviously led to tension with separate ideals from the two countries, with the Americans having a very strong anti-communist pro-capitalist sentiment and the Soviets having the opposite. The two nations kept pushing their influence on the countries, even instilling leaders that supported their ideals to keep control of their halves of the country. In 1950, the leader of North Korea, Kim Il-sung, wanted to take control of the whole chunk of Korea, and this led to the Korean War. It was a bloody war that really left the country right back where it started. The borders didn't change, but 3 million people died, and a massive dead zone was created between the two countries where no military was allowed. If anyone moved military into this section, it would be seen as an act of war. Okay, so this makes everything else make a lot more sense now. You can understand who these two countries are and basically why they're polar opposites. It was all planned from the start. I wonder if North Koreans are taught this. I would assume no, because they are taught a revised version of history that never happened that involves the Kim family all looking like gods. But if they got a glimpse into what the real history was, I wonder if they would be as inclined to live the way that they do, knowing that this was all caused by an outside influence. So now that we had a quick history lesson, we can have a better idea as to what this battle might look like. If North and South Korea went to war, it would depend on who struck first as to how the rest of the world would react. It would most likely be North Korea that fired the first shot, and it would give the rest of the world an opportunity to act. There has been tension with North Korea and every other country for a long time, and other countries might see this as an opportunity to take arms up against their biggest foe, and possibly liberate millions of people from a ruthless dictator. But as we've discussed, North Korea has a long history of allies that have come to their aid on multiple occasions. So depending on how North Korea's allies react to this situation, would they see this as something worth fighting for? Or would getting involved risk another world war and end in a nuclear disaster? Let's start small and go big. Let's say that North Korea shoots the first shot and South Korea has to react. We see tanks move into the demilitarized zone, and now the two countries are firing back at each other. Even though we see North Korea as a scary country who's always flashing their military strength, they actually have a very small army. They spend about a third of the country's GDP on military, but the country makes almost nothing, so they have very little money that they can push into their military spending. South Korea actually outspends North Korea year over year, putting only about 2% of their GDP back into military funding. So on the ground, in the air, and on the water, South Korea should have the advantage. Depending on how long the North Korean public would depend on how long the war would go on for. Usually when your country is losing a war, the people will crack before the military and government, creating chaos in the streets and demanding for the country to surrender so they don't have to die in a senseless war. And this might be an easy thing to swing. If South Korean troops were able to push their way into North Korea, they would be able to start sharing outside information with North Koreans that they never get to see. There are strict rules against learning anything from outside countries in North Korea, which can be punished by death or life in a labor camp. But with government focusing on a war, they would have limited resources to focus on suppressing their people. The villages in the north of North Korea sometimes get contraband from China and get glimpses into what the outside world looks like. Now you would have information that leaks on either side of the country, and the North Korean people would realize how they've been living in comparison to the rest of the world, and they might want a revolution and their leader's head. Also, all of the government officials that work for the Kim family, many of them are aware of what the outside world looks like, but have sworn an oath to North Korea, and I would not want to know what they do to oath breakers in North Korea. As a more powerful military is moving in on the country, we might see a coup, the government turning on the Kim family and trying to save themselves from the South Korean military and being devoured by their own people. This military and the secret police are mostly how the North Korean government is able to keep a stranglehold on its people, and taking that away, the whole system could fall. The Kims would be out, and we might see a liberated North Korea, which would be amazing for the whole country. Now let's bring in some outside factors. Some of you may be thinking that China would be one of the first to come and help. And they might, because if South Korea overtakes North Korea, it would mean that Western ideas would be spreading through Asia, and the Chinese government might see this as not being in their best interest. But on the contrary to popular belief, China and North Korea actually have a terrible relationship. They trade mostly out of necessity, and it has nothing to do with friendship. There has been radiation dust that has floated over to China from North Korea from their nuclear testing. That, along with a host of other problems, has led to poor terms between the two countries. Then there is also the threat of nukes. Even if North Korea fell, if the North Korean people turned on their own government and the South Koreans broke into the capital, it would not be good to have a ruthless dictator stressed and watching his country fall before him, seeing his fate close in as his fingers on the button to launch a nuke. This might allow him to swing a deal to keep North Korea as a safe and sovereign nation, to stop people from leaving and to lose his control. This kind of conflict is probably part of the reason why North Korea started developing nukes in the first place. And honestly, I have no idea how this would play out. Hopefully it would end in the freedom of the North Korean people, but it might end in the first nuclear attack since the Second World War. Now the other big player would be Russia. Where China might not get involved, there would be a much greater chance that the Russians would get involved in this war, and this would pull in the Americans and possibly the UN and some of Europe, and then you would have World War III. Now the outcome of this would hopefully be peace, but again, who knows what would happen when all the superpowers start shooting off nukes at each other. We could all end up living in a world that looks like Fallout 3. Take your radiation pills and put on your hazmat suits, kids. We're going grocery shopping. Watch out for those giant roaches. They bit off Timmy's finger last time. Well, that's all we have for you on today's Life's Biggest Questions. I hope you guys enjoyed our look into what the world might look like if North and South Korea went to war. As always, I would love it if you guys could like, comment, subscribe, and hit the little notification bell. And here's the answer to that riddle. The riddle was, I have cities, but no houses. I have mountains, but no trees. I have water, but no fish. What am I? Well, the answer is a map. There you go, guys. How many of you got it right? Until next time, I've been your host, Che Dorena, and I'm here to answer all your questions.